This video covers the process of importing an expensive item, in this case a helicopter, from Canada to the United States by road. If you're going to fly an aircraft in, the steps are different. In a nutshell, it's pretty simple. Use a broker. I am a U.S. citizen living in Michigan. I bought this helicopter from a man in St. Thomas, Ontario. The sources I spoke to about importing said that I needed to have a bill of sale for the helicopter and that the importation paperwork could be handled by customs personnel at the border coming into the United States. So I thought this will be easy enough and proceeded to drive into Canada with my trailer, load up the helicopter, and haul it to U.S. Customs using my personal pickup truck registered in Michigan, pulling a flatbed trailer that is also registered in the state of Michigan. After picking up the helicopter, I headed west across the Blue Water Bridge and arrived at the customs gates for cars. I showed the officer my passport. He asked about the helicopter and then directed me around to the back where I figured I would present my bill of sale and any other information they needed. I parked in this area with parking slots for semis, and there's a small office inside. When I went inside and explained my situation, they basically smiled and handed me this mandatory refusal sheet and said I would need to file for entry with a broker. So basically they were saying my paperwork was not complete and that I was not allowed into the United States. Also, she said, they had no brokers in the office anymore, but that I could find a broker on the Canadian side and that I should cross the bridge back to Canada. On the refusal sheet, she wrote, "Please direct to brokers." I drove back across the Blue Water Bridge. I went to the truck gates on the right, showed the officer the refusal sheet, and asked where I should go to find a broker. He said, "You can go wherever you want." This was not at all helpful. It turns out there was no office with brokers on standby ready to help people. So I drove to this wide spot in the road just beyond the semi-customs gates, marked with no parking signs, parked my truck and thought about what to do next. Fortunately, in the papers I brought along, there was a sheet with the name and number of a customs broker. It was about 3:30 local time when I called the broker. The company was AMG Custom Solutions, and I talked to Mark. This is not a promotional video for that particular company. There are many customs brokers, but this is the one I used, and they were great to work with. He understood that I was stuck at the border and needed help. He took all my information over the phone. Last, he took down my credit card info and charged all the fees, duties, and associated costs as one lump sum charge to my card. He then said he would build all the required forms, upload them, and call me when he had everything ready. So here I am sitting at the area beyond customs on the Canadian side, waiting for the broker to call me back. I was getting worried because it was now after 5 p.m. and I didn't know if he would complete the forms before the end of his workday. But this was not an issue. He contacted me well after 5 and said he had everything completed and uploaded and that I should find the forms in my email and print them for the customs officers at the border. The problem was I didn't have access to my email or to a printer, so I could not produce any paper forms. In lieu of this, he texted the forms to my cell phone. Hopeful that I had what I needed, I started my truck, drove down East 402 a short distance, and turned around so I could get on westbound 402. I crossed the Blue Water Bridge again, followed the semis to their customs booths on the U.S. side. I handed him my passport, and he asked if I had the ACE manifest. I replied that I did not have a hard copy, but that I did have it on my phone. I handed him my phone with a picture of the manifest sent by the broker, and he pulled it up on his computer. Sitting at the customs booth, the helicopter got a lot of attention. Apparently, helicopters don't come across too often on trailers. A few border officers walked over for a closer look, and the attending officer leaned out of his booth to give it a cursory look. Then he said, "Okay, your broker did everything right. You're free to go." So finally, after 2 hours and a lot of stress, I was legally in the United States on my way home with my new helicopter in tow. In retrospect, it would have been a lot easier to call the broker ahead of time, weeks in advance, and have all the forms printed and ready. Maybe my experience will save you some time on your import. Some things I learned. You don't have to have an aircraft registered in the U.S. before importing it on a trailer. Also, an aircraft does not need to be deregistered before importing it. That can be done anytime, but it must be done by the person it's registered to in Canada. And it must be deregistered before a United States N number can be assigned. Another thing, there are no EPA considerations with aircraft as there are with imported motor vehicles. And one more thing, if you're buying a trailer in Canada, you need to take some additional steps with regard to U.S. registration and DOT compliance. For this reason, it's much easier to bring your own trailer with a valid U.S. registration.